The human brain is so vulnerable to fake news that legislators, in my opinion, should really consider to exclude political candidates that lie too often. Maybe you know that one of the first political appearances of Donald Trump was when he accused Barack Obama to not being born in the USA. Even though Trump himself later on withdrew his accusation and said, well, Barack Obama is born in the USA, period. Even though he withdrew, about 73 of the Republican Party at least had some doubt that Barack Obama was born in the USA. And in 2016, 41% were actually absolutely convinced that he is not born in the USA. And of course, I don't have to tell you that this was not the only one lie from Donald Trump. For example, he said, people should not believe those phony numbers that the unemployment rate is about 4.9%. The real numbers are about 28, 29. And he even heard, and that's one of his techniques, he always say, I heard from somebody, because then he cannot be accused of being the spreader of the fake news. He even heard that the real number is about 42%. And of course, people know that this is bullshit. But on the other hand, there is a psychological effect which is called anchoring, which means that if you hear such a number, it's hard for your brain to readjust to the real number. So maybe people hear the number 42% and they think, well, this is complete bullshit. But on the other hand, if they think about what could be the real number, they will have trouble to ignore this number. So maybe they think, well, the real number might be 8% or something like this, even though if the real number is, as we heard, for example, 4.9%. So anchoring effects are one of the reasons why fake news can be really disastrous. Another reason is the so-called truth illusion, which means the more often we hear a statement, the more probably we think it's true. This is the truth illusion. And the reason is, if we hear, for example, well, Barack Obama is not born in the USA, and we hear it over and over again, our brain begins to fluently process this information, and that's something our brain loves. Our brain loves to process information which is fluent. And therefore, the more often we hear something, the more we think it is true. And this, for example, could be shown in a study by Henkel and colleagues published in 2011 in the journal Consciousness and Cognition. And in this study, they presented participants a lot of statements. For example, Austria and Switzerland are connected via the Brenner Pass. And some of these statements were presented 3 times and others were presented only once. And 2 weeks later, they were shown the same statements again, and they were also shown new statements. And it turned out that completely new statements were regarded as true much less than, for example, statements which had been presented 1 time. And those statements that had been presented 3 times, those statements were much more often regarded as true. And those results show if we allow people to spread fake news all over again and again, our brain will have really trouble to decide what's true and what's false. And therefore, I think societies and legislators really should think about whether they allow the obvious spread of fake news, if it's from a political candidate or if it's from an actual president. Because otherwise, the more often the fake news gets spread, for example, in the internet via social bots, for example, the more often the fake news gets spread, the more often we tend, and it's the sad truth, the more often we tend to believe this bullshit. And you see, I'm a little bit more emotional than usual, because for me as a scientist who is searching for the truth, there's nothing being worse than seeing the spread of fake news. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you liked the video, you can share it, because I think it's an important message. People should know about it, and maybe we will see next time.